Okay. I am excited. This is going to be a good live. Let me know if you're watching the live or the replay. Say hi as you jump in. Do-do-do. Perfect. I already see my girly. I'm excited about today's live situation. Hello, beautiful people. Have you all been waiting? I feel like all of you guys just sit there and refresh the button. So funny. Do-do-do. Okay, I hear static, so I'm guessing my lovely girly is getting ready or it's starting to work. Okay, there we go. Now I can see you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you guys hear her? Let me know if you can.
And am I blurry for you, or is that just my end that's looking weird?
I don't know. I actually see you fine. You're just like really
Okay.
small icon for me for some reason.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I think it's fine then.
Perfect.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, we'll see. Okay, we can all hear everybody. I think your camera's off right now, but whenever you're ready, I'm going to allow people to come in and then we are going to get started. Okay, now I can see you.
You can see me? Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Perfect. How is everybody doing? How are we? I'm excited. This is going to be great. I put on a dress today.
I know, look, we're all matchy
I
matchy.
know, kind of are. We synced up
I
today.
literally knew it.
It's so funny. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, if you guys want to, definitely share it out with your friends if you have anybody that's interested in the topic. We are going to be talking about some very interesting things today. This is going to be a very different live than what I'm used to doing. Usually I'm just here kind of like the sparring target, answering questions and rapid fire coaching. This live is going to be a little bit different. I have the lovely Farrell with me, as I'm sure you guys can see, and hopefully you guys can see and hear perfectly. She is a femininity, you can say, and masculine and feminine polarity expert in the dating realm. And she's going to come on. She's going to ask me some questions about manifestation. I'm going to ask her some questions about masculine and feminine dating. And we're just going to have a really good time. You guys are going to learn a lot. And feel free to drop some questions down in the chat, even if you'd like. And if we feel like it's a really good teaching point, we may even point it out and, answer it. But this is supposed to be a very fun live of incorporating masculine and feminine dynamics with manifestation. Because I know you guys, and I know that 99% of you are after love in 2023. I mean, that's pretty much all of TikTok. And so we want to make sure that we are feeding what your needs are. And what the lovely Farrell over here, as my guest, is an expert in is keeping your standards high, keeping your self concept high, expecting the best out of situations. And we're going to just be marrying both of our expertise together in this really fun live. So, would you like to begin or would you like me to begin? You let me know.
I will just do a little introduction real quick for
Go
those
for
of
it. Yeah,
for those who are not familiar with, even feminine energy work
of
in
course.
general. They might not even be familiar with it. So what I like to focus on, Persis did mention high standards and all of that, but I think that on TikTok in general, I used to be on TikTok a lot. Now I am mainly on YouTube. So that's where you can find most of my content. But what I noticed on TikTok, at least, is that a lot of the advice on high standards can be a bit self-centered, where we don't take both parties into perspective, and we don't take into perspective that we actually want a healthy relationship with the masculine and the feminine. It's not just about the feminine getting everything that she wants, but it's about filling up both parties. So basically with the high standards is that I promote that with feminine energy because they really do go hand in hand.
Yeah.
But what we want to see is that both parties, both the man, the masculine, the feminine, the woman, is moving up and leveling up in their lives, and it's benefiting both parties. So, as if a woman is lowering her standards for a man, he doesn't have the chance to rise up to his new level and his next level and really advance in his life. And then she goes down there and
Yeah,
basically discounts herself.
absolutely.
Whereas, and for men too, I don't want men lowering their standards
Right.
for settling for a woman who's not feminine if that's what they want. So
Absolutely.
it benefits both parties, but yeah, mainly I talk about self-improvement. I do talk about manifestation, but as I talked a lot about it with Persis. I am not necessarily part of the manifestation community, so I'm not exactly familiar with all of the terms and the language that y'all have going on that y'all speak.
Yeah.
So it'll be really interesting to actually talk about these topics from, I guess, kind of an unbiased but experienced perspective. So that'll be a
Mhm.
lot of fun.
Yeah, Farrell has definitely used manifestation, having understood a little bit about her personally in her life in different aspects. But she didn't really know what she was doing when she was doing it and how and why certain elements came together the way they did. So this is going to be like it's going to be really, really interesting. So we're going to just kind of, I guess, trade off questions back and forth. And I have no problem beginning if you want me to begin.
Yeah, go for it.
Perfect. So, one of the things that I have here in my list of questions for you, I feel like a teacher or something. Like I have these lists of questions. It's so fun. Um,
Yes.
but I want to kind of start off very gently with asking your opinion on why do you feel like, from obviously a different niche, which is masculine and feminine polarity dynamics and being that expert in relationships, why do you feel like having high standards allows men to magnetize in and kind of become obsessed with you? Because a lot of individuals, they're after like the man just having like hearts in his eyes for his woman, and I actually feel like men are they're most attractive when they're just head over heels with their woman. But a lot of women don't know how to activate that side of them. And it seems like with your teachings, you speak of high standards definitely helps get you there. But
Mhm.
I'm curious as to your thoughts on that.
Sure. So let's think about it from a man's perspective in general, from an evolutionary perspective. Men were the hunters. They were the ones that pursued the animals to hunt and, kill and bring them back to the tribe
Yeah.
to eat. And so they are, they have that hunter energy. They have that, they want to pursue. And so, this could be a little bit controversial, but the roles have almost been reversed in the Western dating society now, where it's like the women kind of pursue the men. And as we can see by the divorce rates or just like the sort of, I guess, the modern dating culture where a lot of people are not satisfied, they don't like what's going on, there's a lot of casual dating, stuff like that. I believe that that comes from either a reverse of the polarity or just neutralizing the polarity in general.
Right.
So, how, I guess you ask, how can women get men into that state? And I want to say it's not manipulative, it is getting them into their natural state where they actually thrive the most. From my relationship, I'm now married. I dated for marriage and now I'm married. So what I've seen is that he is in his best energy. He's in his most masculine energy when, in his business, in his life, with his friends, with colleagues, with all of that, and in our relationship, whenever we are setting up that feminine energy on my end to
Mhm.
allow him to pursue. And
Yeah.
so this is even easier in dating and not lowering your standards, because then he gets to hunt, then he gets to pursue. And so if he's not doing that, then it's kind of like, well, that was boring. Like that was easy, right? And
Yeah.
so if he's not able to do the hunting and able to do the pursuing, then that polarity is not necessarily being created. And like people are like, oh, I don't like to play games. Like we don't want to play games. No, it is a game and it can be fun for both parties.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think, the perspective of like, let's not play games. Well, if you're dating with a goal, like dating for marriage, then that technically is not playing games, right? I would say the casual dating, the modern dating, how we're just kind of having like casual affairs with people, that's
Yeah.
playing games with people's minds. But it is a polarity game where the feminine, like the masculine does lead, but the
Right.
feminine actually sets up the polarity. She has to be the one that leans back and is able to receive and is able to lean back to allow him to pursue.
Right. No, of course, I agree with that entirely because actually the casual dating scene, and it's of course what we probably see on TikTok, our following probably sees more than we do because we don't always engage with it, is like, women being truly unhappy, being really dissatisfied in their lives, and where manifestation can become married into, I guess you can say, masculine and feminine dynamics is the law of polarity, where
Yeah.
the yin does have to balance the yang. And in
Mhm.
many instances, people struggle to get a very magnetized reaction out of their person, out of their place, out of their thing, whatever it may be. And a lot of that stems from the fact that, maybe they have a low sense of self worth. Maybe their standards aren't good. Maybe they are playing games and allowing the person to show up in a lesser capacity just to keep access to them. And that comes from a very desperate energy, a very low standards energy. Our person, whoever that is, they're going to
Mhm.
sense if we're in our most self-assured nature or if we're just trying to be the one that keeps going after them. And if a man doesn't have sometimes a woman that has a good sense of boundaries, a good sense of self-worth, a good sense of discipline or self-respect, then it's going to be really, really hard for the man to give that to her, because from a manifestation angle, with Everybody Is You pushed out and Neville Goddard, you're never going to receive from someone else what you're not capable of assuming or believing that you're worthy of yourself.
Yeah.
And the person picks up on that. You know what I mean? There's a difference between a woman that's pursuing because she thinks that, she needs this person, she needs this to work out, and someone who's like relaxed back, knows her value, knows her worth, knows she's deserving of it all, and allows the man to come in and be a man.
Yeah, and that has everything to do with self-concept because we have to create that so I don't know if your community is familiar with like the word energetic container or masculine container,
Hmm.
but as we're talking about polarity within relationships, we also have it within ourselves. So we have our masculine container that holds our feminine energy. This is the way I like to describe it. Hopefully y'all can see this. This
Yeah.
glass is the container. The water
Right.
inside is the feminine. So this is the
Right.
masculine, the feminine is the water in here.
Right.
This water would go all over the place and not be able to actually flow in here and be happy if water could have emotions, that it's
Right.
contained without the structure. And
Right.
so we have that within ourselves too. And you know when we don't have that, we can see that as our self-concept too. We have the container of our self-concept, and then we can flow within that
Yeah.
instead of having to, I don't know if affirm it all the time is the right word, but the self concept, we can set it and we can remind ourselves of that. We can, act as if within that self concept. And then
Yeah.
if we go outside of it, it's like, oh, well, you're not in your container anymore. So you're kind of confused, or maybe you're not getting your manifestation, whatever it is for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
where you marry this really well is a lot of people in my community, they're aware of just affirming, 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 affirming. And of course, you can allow a man to become more pursuant of you,
Mm-hmm.
um, if you affirm, absolutely, because what you affirm, you will eventually believe, you will eventually assume, and will eventually push out. But sometimes it's also much more multifaceted. You can begin from a thought based place if
Mm-hmm.
you're, how do I say, if you're at that stage in the game. But remember, affirmations are also supposed to eventually evoke feelings. Feelings are supposed to eventually evoke also you being the person and also having the corresponding boundaries, the corresponding sense of self respect, self worth, acting like, you are the version that gets what you want. You are the version that is the prize. You are the version that is pursued. So
Yeah.
we're both really articulating the same message. It's just for you, you add in thoughts, feelings, boundaries, self care. Um, and that's what this is all about, because when we talk about the game in the dating world, it's playing a game to pretend that you don't have emotions and you don't have boundaries and that you're just
Mm-hmm.
okay with this go with the flow. But a woman that's high in self concept is not gonna come into this and just be like, I'll just see what happens.
Yeah.
I'll just see how things play out. She's going to come in and be like, these are my boundaries. This is my cover charge. You can pay it or you can go.
Yeah,
And what I
exactly.
think both of us want to emphasize to individuals is in many instances, if people are coming from a place of lack, they just want anything they can get. Absolutely anything they can get. And they compromise on their boundaries, they compromise on their self worth, they compromise on how much access that person can have or don't have. And that's the thing that's hard.
Yeah, and I think that that can also, like, going back to the game thing, even manifestation is a game. It has rules. It's
Yeah,
hopefully fun. Hopefully it's not stressing people
hopefully.
out as they're doing it. And it's like when you don't have that container and you don't have that solid self-concept, then say, you have this certain manifestation. Let's say money, for example. This is an easy example. And you're like, I want to manifest $10,000, but you don't have a solid self-concept. Well, we can also, compare this to dating, is like, then, okay, well, maybe you'll settle for 5,000 instead. And then you're like,
Right,
okay, well, that's all I can get. Or maybe you'll settle for 1,000. But that's not the original desire. That's not the original intent of the manifestation. So
right.
you still have to have your boundaries in check for manifestation and whatnot too.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Do you want me to go or do you want to
I'll,
pop
I'll go
back?
ahead and ask you a question. So I do have a few things. I've seen it in the chat too. A lot of people asking about specific person, and I feel like this is something that I don't think we disagree on, but I'm also not sure we agree on.
Yeah,
But so I think it'll make for a good conversation.
sure.
So as we've now talked about the masculine, feminine polarity and whatnot, do you feel that manifesting a specific person
Mhm.
is the most, let's say, the most efficient means of getting a relationship that does have that polarity? Or
Mhm.
do you think having that, and I know we've talked about this, like the masculine energy is a bit more penetrating. And
Right.
so if we want to be in our feminine, we don't want to be having that penetrating energy.
Right.
Do you see specific person manifestations as too penetrating to attract a masculine feminine dynamic, or what's your opinion on that now?
My opinion on it is contrary to popular belief. I know all of my individuals want me to help them manifest an SP. Like I'd probably say 90% of them, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually like team new person all the way because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like from me, from my past, from my situations, I would never want to ever since finding out about the law. And I also find it to be very taxing. And honestly, I don't feel like anyone from the past is worth bringing back, as
Mm-hmm.
terrible or as honest as that is to say. However,
Yeah.
I am aware that some individuals have a very deep pull towards seeing certain individuals as like the one that got away, maybe even because they messed up, or maybe even because they don't feel like it was the right time or the right place, and it's almost like something they can't quite let go of unless they give like a fair and honest try to.
Mm-hmm.
So where I believe like specific person manifestation falls in terms of masculine and feminine dynamics is I think it can be both.
Mm-hmm.
um but in this situation, the people that lead and do it from a feminine, more feminine way, I think they're more successful. Now, this is me detailing what I would advise, probably like a client of mine, is obviously first and foremost, make sure you're working on self concept. You're consciously choosing your thoughts. Your thoughts will eventually become stronger with the first repetition, 10th repetition, 50th repetition. You want to try to also, if you can, activate a sense of, if you were saying this affirmation as if you were choosing or selecting a quantum field to exist in, how would it feel if you knew that this was true? If you knew, and I gave a very fun analogy, and I don't know, I don't think you probably saw it, but I'm going to allude to it right now, and I'm sure people in the chat know. I gave a very elaborate, like almost like free master class on explaining quantum physics using Monsters Inc. And
Mm-hmm.
I did this fun little analogy where I was like, do you remember all those doors that, we saw in the film? Imagine each one is a different parallel reality that you get to put your door in front of. You get to select your door, you get to hook it up, and you get to, like, with your key or with your activation of being the person who exists in that reality, go through the door and exist in that reality. And so The first step of that is obviously to make sure you're being the person, to make sure your thoughts, your feelings, your assumptions, your expectations are in alignment with whoever she is or whoever he is. That's step number one. Now, as it pertains to the SP side of things, I can definitely see how it can be a little bit more masculine or penetrating energy, because I do also advise my people that even when you move into phase two of my coaching, which is all about the specific person and changing those assumptions, I do want them to start to, similarly with self concept, select their thoughts and expectations on how this person is going to show up. That maybe if you're feeling this energy, it means that they could be feeling this too. Because a lot of times I feel like specific person manifestation is a difficult pill for people to swallow, mainly because the people that have a judgment about it are just people that like literally would just be okay with anybody, and they just don't see why someone would spend time on it, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally aware of. Like, it's really not for everybody.
Yeah.
um but it's a very interesting debate. I don't know if I answered the question, but I feel like it's feminine until you move into the changing the expectations from the SP,
Yeah.
because then what you're doing is you're going to marry self concept with SP affirmations. And that's when you are exerting some more energy about seeing that person differently, because we can't also assume that our specific person hates our guts and get them to come back.
Right. Yeah, and I can kind of see I guess a little bit of a remedy for this from both of, the perspective of someone wanting that versus wanting that, but also wanting to stay in their feminine energy, like as a woman, for
Yeah.
example. So I guess I could see, okay, so you think about your specific person. And then you also write on another page, like a complete love list of what you desire in a future partner, regardless of who it is.
Yeah.
If that matches up with that person, or, if they're like, say, 80% match or something like that,
Yeah.
then I could see, okay, like that could be something that would more easily work, I guess, or I guess in my mind is more easily done from not such a penetrating sort of energy.
Yeah.
Is
I know.
that correct way of thinking on that? Or
I definitely recommend that they do a list, and I definitely
Mhm.
have my personal clients do that. I've come up with a lot of innovative ways to articulate them creating that list. I think for them, though, sometimes it's just so important. And this is a fun way that I describe it. Like, if you were to go to, like, because I use all these like weird analogies that just work for people's brains, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, if you were to go to a Build-A-Bear shop and build your person from head to toe, from the personality to their own sense of morals or self respect or their own self concept, how they engage with you, how the dynamic is, and everything else about it. Um, it's going to end up allowing you to be in the state of mind um, where you guys were solid. You know what I mean? Where things were thriving. And in
Yeah.
many instances, you can still feel that on the opposite end.
That makes a lot of sense. No, I like how you describe that. And I think, yeah, I think we agree with it, with the perspective
Yeah,
of, that and whatnot. I guess it just depends on what each individual wants. So,
of course. Absolutely.
yeah. So I guess that takes me, I'll have, a question that kind of goes with that because I
Yeah,
feel like we started to go into detachment a little bit, or you
yeah,
didn't say it, but I feel like that's kind of what we were moving towards. So that's something that I know that you definitely wanted to tell me about, and you told me a little bit about it. But that's something that I did, or I
yeah,
still do within my unknown manifesting technique that works for me. And
yeah.
why is that?
Okay, so this is actually quite funny. Um, Farrell came from like a law of attraction background. Like, that's what she, I guess, knew first. And she also kind of was wondering, like, am I in law of attraction? Am I practicing law of assumption? What am I doing? And I told her, like, after looking at her page and hearing her speak on a variety of different topics, I'm like, I definitely feel like you're a law of assumption.
Mm.
But it's funny because where the law of detachment comes in and where there's a big contradiction in law of attraction and law of assumption with detachment is this. Detachment and law of attraction says you can only have certain finite things in this life based on maybe your past life karma, how things have worked out for you, and everything is already predetermined in the sky for your life to work out in a certain way. Like your soulmate is decided for you, how much money you're going to have is decided for you. And in some instances, you need to kind of detach and surrender, and whatever comes back to you, that's what was meant to be. And I guess the biggest, I guess you could say, difference between attraction and assumption is that in assumption, we're practicing more from a Neville state where it's like anything that you can build an assumption around, you're going to end up receiving in your reality because some type of bridge of incidents will occur to be able to get you from point A to point B. And that any possible reality is there for you based on, quantum physics and, that whole spiel, which is an entire lecture in itself. And in that topic, like, law of assumption doesn't have limitations. And many people that left the law of attraction community and came to law of assumption found that there was a fatal flaw there because things that were told to them as things they couldn't have, it
Yeah.
was a lot of the reason why is because one, there's not a lot of self-concept over there, and we don't really understand it in the same way that we understand it in assumption and how and why it's so important. And two, there's a big thing of like your power is not within you, it's within an outside entity. So law of detachment as it pertains to assumption is, I believe, where it's at, which is the only limitation on the law is the limitation you have in the own confines of your mind. If
Right.
you can expand your mental capacity to comprehend the fact that any possible permutation of reality you're experiencing is based on the compilation of both your good and your bad assumptions. And if you want a higher quantum reality to exist in, you have to find out where your assumptions aren't quite matching up to be able to get you to that level. And that's how we quantum leap. And so that's actually what I believe. And in my life, because I've taken a lot of scientific curiosity and a lot of obsession in understanding how and why things work, that's why I think that I left the attraction community, because I was like, I feel like we were all misled a little bit. You know what I mean? And I feel like creators were putting out the best content that they could. But we've realized, not only myself, but a big part of my community and even other people's communities realized that we actually had access to more realities than what we originally knew.
Right. Yeah. So that's interesting. I guess maybe the way that I talk about detachment is not necessarily, well, it is surrender. So, okay, I wrote something down. I guess I'll
Yeah,
just say what I wrote down while you're talking. But so the way that I view the surrendering is I have faith that I'm going to be aligned with the reality in the quantum field that is the timeline where I have
yeah,
all the desires with the current
yeah,
manifestation that I'm, trying to manifest and whatnot. So that's definitely law of assumption, but I believe the feminine energy comes into it because I'm coming from it from that background where I surrender to it and I'm not going to be the one basically grinding or hustling, if that makes
yeah,
sense, for the manifestation. I'm just
right.
going to sit back and let it come to me because I already know it's going to come to me.
Yeah.
But that's my self concept.
And that's your assumption. You see what I mean?
Right, exactly.
Exactly. So I
Yeah, so I
think,
don't think I'm really law of attraction. I mean, maybe some things, I still have from that,
yeah.
but yeah, that's really interesting. I would say definitely I align more with law of assumption.
Yeah, because assumption, and I went on such a big ramble. I want to also connect myself back to my point because I realized I didn't get to where I eventually wanted to go, which is why it ends up working for you is because you've done so much self-concept work. You know what I mean? From where you were before to where you are now, you have a high sense of self-worth. You know what you're going to accept, what you're not going to accept. And so in the law of detachment, why I think things come back to you, because in law of attraction, it's like if it was meant to be, it would come,
Mm,
type of situation. And depending on how your views and points are on that, that's a whole other topic in itself. But
yeah.
what we know and what I know that you know is I don't have to work hard to have the type of reality that I want. I just need to align my thoughts, my feelings, my assumptions, and my expectations to get it. And that I know whatever needs to arrange itself is going to come and show up at my doorstep. I don't have to do anything to go get it. So that's why I think for you, you're also an assumption girly as well, because it's because you have certain foundational beliefs that that ends up working out.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, yeah, I don't believe if it's meant to be, it will be necessarily. Let me think about this for a second because there was something that actually shifted my mindset from that. Because I
Yeah,
think I used to think that before I even got into manifestation, but it's that still proves law of assumption because if you think that, then that's how your reality is going to be.
exactly. Exactly.
So it all
Every
comes back to law of assumption, anyways.
yeah,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I like that. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Okay, so I know I have a question here. Oh my gosh, this is a good one. And it's kind of focusing on a little bit of the quantum elements that we're focused on right now. We spoke yesterday, and you talked a little bit about how the past, present, and future in the form of affirmations doesn't
Mm,
really end up playing a role for you because you see, through the quantum realm, past, present, and future
mm,
already exists all at once, or something like that. Can you
yeah.
speak a little bit about that and how that's helped you maybe during times where in your formative stages, you were still playing around with things and you were still working on getting the level of confidence you have now? Like a lot of people may be trying to manifest love as their first thing that they're manifesting. So maybe some of them don't have a big level of confidence in this working because they've been either in the attraction field for too long, they had a lot of misinformation, they had maybe different creators put some beliefs on them that were limiting and they only believed they could do it a particular way. I'm curious as to how you're capable of, aligning yourself in that manner.
Okay. So let me make sure I'm understanding the question.
Yeah.
So past, present, future. We talked about this yesterday. This is
Mhm.
something I've been thinking about for like the past 24 hours. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, I never even thought of that before. But okay, so yes, I see the quantum field as I think we're all seeing it in this community, but yeah, I may just word it differently. So the way I see it is like you said, all those doors and Monsters Inc. that you can choose from. Well, some of those, could be in the past. If we look at it from a bird's eye view,
Hmm.
it's like everything's happening all at once. And
Yeah.
so basically what I do, so say I'm trying to quantum leap, say I'm trying to I wouldn't say I necessarily try to manifest like one thing at a time. I'm not going to be like, oh, I want to manifest a glass of water or something like that. It's more
Hmm.
like I'm trying to manifest a completely different reality
Right.
at once, which brings me all of the things I want. So more focused on self concept, but also focused on my quantum self. That's what I always focus on. And so for me, what I do is and this comes back to feminine energy too, because I only get these downloads. I would say it's connected to my intuition when I'm in my feminine energy. So if I'm in the shower or going for a walk or just doing something, I'm not sitting down with a journaling page trying to like write down everything that comes to my logical brain. I get these downloads to say, okay, move here, uh, redo your wardrobe, or it's little things like that, or sign up for this sort of coaching, or go start working out 6 days a week. Whatever it is, I'll get these downloads, and I just trust it,
Hmm.
and I act on it, and
Yeah.
that always brings me the manifestation or the new reality that
Hmm.
I'm stepping into. And
Yeah.
so as this has to do with confidence and whatnot,
Yeah.
my quantum self is always going to be more confident, going to know something that I don't know yet.
Right.
And so the downloads are coming from my quantum self. That's how I'm viewing it, or that's
Yeah.
whatever has worked for me. And so basically my quantum self, the more confident, the more wealthy, the more feminine, the more luxurious version of myself knows these things that is trying to communicate, plant into my subconscious or conscious mind. I'm
Hmm.
not actually sure which one, but plant into my mind somehow to basically suggest to me and make me feel like it's my idea because our egos like that. Our egos
Yeah.
like to think that it's our idea. And then I can act on it or not. And if I
Yeah.
don't, usually, the manifestation doesn't happen for me. But if I act on it and that's where I have the surrender and the faith, like, okay, like you want me to dye my hair this color? Well, let's go. I'm going to go dye my hair that color.
Yeah.
And then, my manifestation comes to me. And that's how it happens for me pretty much 100% of the time.
Yeah. In many instances, the way I try to marry this into manifestation also is because a lot of people are focused on like maybe love, maybe fitness, maybe money. I
Mhm.
ask them, like, what are the thoughts, feelings, expectations, boundaries, self care routine? What is the way you walk, talk, dress, act like? Like, if you were to put on a costume and if you were to go out, like, and have to perform in a play, and it's like you have to pick your outfit, you got to see your lines and everything like that, and okay, in 30 seconds the curtain goes up, and you had to play the role of what I refer to as the 2.0 version of you. Who
Yeah.
is that person? What is their demeanor? What do they dress like? How do they talk? How do they act? How do they show up? How do they present themselves? It's a different version of you, because if you were already the perfect version of you right now with the perfect thoughts, perfect assumptions, perfect everything, you'd already have it. But the fact that there is some type of gap between you and your ideal reality means that something isn't quite aligning up in the way that it needs to be. Some part
Mhm.
of your expectation, or how life works, or how love works, or how money works, or some part of your worthiness or your self concept, your deservingness of it is off. Something is inconsistent. So, what we're trying to, I guess, get out there in both of our teachings is her or him is always going to be able to tell you what's missing. And the problem with a lot of people is they want to keep being the same person, but somehow leap to that reality. And what we're trying to articulate to people is the way to leap to that reality is to first become her. Because the way she gets treated or the way he gets treated is by having a different level of boundaries, maybe. And maybe boundaries may be like, oh my God, Persis, like, can you just shut up? Like, you're on about boundaries or something like that. Like, how are my boundaries going to attract somebody into my life? But if you think about it, those types of small details have a tremendous amount of value, because maybe the current level of partners you're attracting are disrespectful, are not asking you out on dates, are not giving you the type of treatment that you want. And you know why that's happening is because the boundaries are not quite there. So you
Right.
may see that as like something so obsolete, but that's actually what your quantum self is saying. Please work on this so I can give you better, because I want to
Yes.
give you better, but you are not wanting to become better. You are not wanting to trust me. You are not wanting to maybe invest in your knowledge or your appearance or your whatever it may be, based on your goals. And so there's almost like the quantum version of you that's like, please, please, please do what I'm asking you to do, because this is what I'm doing. And if you want to be where I am, you need to do and be who I'm being.
Yeah, and like I think something that's really important to remember is that boundaries are not for other people, they are for ourselves.
Yeah.
And think of all the energy that you could be using towards your manifestation, towards becoming that next version of yourself, but you're wasting all that energy by your lack of boundaries.
Yeah.
Like I was talking about the container here, like this glass is a masculine container. If this glass had a bunch of holes in it, which would be, symbolize the lack of boundaries, the water would be leaking out everywhere. And that's your energy. Your
Yeah.
energy is just leaking out. Like I'm talking about physical energy, like you eat to fuel your body and you have that
Yeah.
energy. This is not even masculine and feminine. It's just, if you don't have that, and you're sitting there arguing with someone all day, trying to even set your boundaries all day, where you're like, I
Mhm.
told you not to say this to me. I told you not to do this to me. Why are you doing this? Da-da-da. No, just stop. Like, just literally stop
Yeah.
and cut the freaking people off. Like,
Yeah.
don't respond. Literally, just, I think it's called the like gray rock method. And it's usually used for people who have narcissists in their life, who are
Yeah.
energy vampires.
Yeah.
And what happens is they just gray rock, they just do not react because
Yeah.
these people are not
I have a very
interacting with you
rough.
at a soul level. They're interacting with you at a very, very triggered nervous system level. And
Yeah.
so they aren't thinking about manifesting. They aren't thinking about becoming their quantum selves. So
No.
just like, it's just not even worth it to have those people in your life.
Yeah.
And so by setting boundaries, it really just means that you no longer give energy to something, you no longer react to it. You do not have to respond to anyone. You don't owe anyone anything.
Yeah.
And so it is your life. You get to put all of your energy towards what you want to put it towards, and that is that.
Yeah. And this is where I want to also clarify on something, because I feel like I saw a comment a little while back that the talk of energy brings me back to law of attraction. But the
Mm,
way that I don't think that that is the case is if you think about you pretending to be okay with a gentleman maybe coming into your space and offering you a friends with benefits situation,
mhm.
that drains your energy because
Yeah.
you're sitting there and you're trying to be someone you're not. You're
Yeah.
getting frustrated at the fact that he's not being consistent, and it's draining your energy. It's draining your optimism. It's draining your hope. It's draining your manifestation process. I don't think anybody is in an unbalanced relationship and just feels full of energy. You know, usually they're very hopeless. Usually they're very sad. Usually they're
Yeah.
in a lot of despair. In some instances, they may even be in codependent or desperation or lack. And these are very draining energies. So when we talk
Mhm.
about having boundaries, you know what I mean, or having trying to figure out who she is, the best way to
Mhm.
do it is if you were to think or daydream about who she is or who he is, like how we talked about, and
Mhm.
maybe even if she was going to write a letter to you, like on what you need to do or who you need to be or what's missing from your present reality to come and meet me here, what would she tell you that you're not doing? You know,
Mhm.
maybe the things that you know, even that you're avoiding. And so I think the best way to understand, like, a good example of, you know, setting boundaries is seeing where in your life you're being deeply unfulfilled
Mhm.
and where your cup needs to be poured into more, and starting from there, because having a good sense of boundaries, having a good sense of self-worth is so important to be able to, in many instances, break that almost like generational curse of just not being lucky in love or just not being lucky in money or not being lucky in whatever area you may want.
Yeah, and that made me think about self-integrity, how if, for example, so with the whole boundary talk, right? If we do
Hmm.
not have self-integrity, so say every day you tell yourself you're going to work out and then
Right.
you don't trust yourself. And so that's an example that you don't have boundaries within yourself.
Yeah.
If you don't wake up at the time you say you're going to, if you don't
Yeah.
work out whenever you tell yourself that. And I think a lot of people struggle with this is that they have, I did too, years of this being built up where
Yeah.
they deeply do not trust themselves to do what they say they're going to do. And so
Yeah.
how can you even trust someone else
Of
or
course.
attract someone that you trust if you don't trust yourself and you're not a trustworthy person?
Absolutely.
Also, this leads to the quantum self, which this just popped in my head. I've actually never thought of this before, but to become your quantum self, you need to be in integrity with her or
Yeah.
him.
Because she has a certain regime. She has a certain self-care routine. She has a
Yeah.
you know, way that she shows up for herself. She exercises certain boundaries when people cross a line.
Hmm. Exactly. So first, I think we need to work on being in integrity with our current self, and then we can be in integrity with our quantum self too. I mean, you can just jump to it if you're obviously, experienced with inner work or manifesting or law of assumption and whatnot. But I think a lot of people need to just do the basics and the foundation before trying to skip that and move
Yeah.
on to, the
Try
more
to
advanced work.
build the walls or build the foundation.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, I think you're up now. I'm excited for your next question.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. I've asked two of my questions. What would be the best? Okay, so from what we've talked about and what you now know about feminine energy,
Okay.
so actually let me ask this first. I I guess I did see the comment too about how the energy talk has to do with like law of attraction. How is that connected? And separate question, or
Mhm.
actually, let's answer that first, and I'll ask my other one.
Okay. Yeah. Sometimes my mind gets too distracted. So give
Yeah.
me time. Uh, I'll give like a 10-minute answer to what was supposed to be like a three-line question or a
Mhm.
three-line answer. So, this is my thought process on energy in law of assumption. Our
Mhm.
thoughts, when thought repetitively and consciously, eventually become an assumption. An assumption, by definition, according to the internet and according to Persis, is something you know to be true as a
Mhm.
matter of a fact. So for me, an example of a good assumption is the sky is blue, the grass is green. I don't need to go outside and check it, whether it's daytime, whether it's cloudy, whether the grass is fried because it's winter, whether it's dark outside, the sky is blue and the grass is green, whether it's nighttime, whether it's daytime, whether it's any time in between.
Mm.
So, where energy comes in my opinion, is with our states of being, which is what Neville speaks of. Um, and a state is a very interesting thing to kind of discuss because it's a very thought, feeling, assumption, expectation, who you're being. It's
Mm.
almost like if you were to ask yourself, if I got everything I wanted right now, how would I think, feel, believe, act, assume, show up in my life? And you would instantly almost get like flushed cheeks. You would get this excitement because all the stories that you've tied as almost like a shackle around your ankle for why you can't have it have been keeping you stuck. But when you go into a state of being, which is very complex, which is where me and you are speaking from, which is thought, feeling, assumption, expectation, how life works out for you. Like it's a very multifaceted 360 thing. It's so much more deeper than just our thoughts. That's when you get into like it, you literally feel different,
Yeah.
like because you're actually being and you're understanding what it means to be the person that has the desire when you try to activate that. Like if I was to tell some of my followers right now, what would I tell you if I could snap my fingers and guarantee that their specific person is going to show up fully conformed on their doorstep after this live? A lot of them are going to start getting ready. A lot of them are going to start like, getting excited, and they're going to start getting to all these different things. And that's just going to be what ends up happening. And that's very different than who they're walking around and expecting and anticipating and being right now. And so when I discuss energy as it pertains to law of assumption, is I want people to try to think, if you couldn't fail, how would you manifest?
Mm.
If you couldn't fail, if I told you I'm going to snap my fingers, your self concept is perfect. I was going to snap my fingers, your concept of your desire is on 10.
Mm-hmm.
How would you show up? How would you act? How would you anticipate things? How would you expect things to work out for you if you knew you couldn't get it wrong? There's
Mm.
almost a certain level of smugness, a certain level of
Yes.
arrogance that one has when they walk around, knowing
Yeah.
that my stuff is mine, baby. Nobody can knock me off this. And that's a different energy. Even as I'm describing that, my whole legs got like goosebumps galore.
Yeah. I'm in
I
it.
have chills as I describe that. Even that
Yeah.
energy is different. And
Yes.
sometimes it's because we give so much energy and power to our circumstances, and
Mm.
we make them almost like a shackle around our ankle attached to this big boulder, that we can't cross the metaphorical finish line of our manifestation and win the race because we're just stuck in the past and we're like, I refuse to let it go. I've given this
Mm.
analogy many times that the energy of someone almost hanging on to their old story and embedding it into them and making them a part of their being. You almost don't even know how that person can react with this not here because they start to panic, and this doesn't feel comfortable to exist without that blockage being a part of them. And that's what I say when I refer to the energy is different. And if you think about self-concept, your energy is different when you know you are the prize, okay? I know a lot of people wanted Lori Harvey energy. When you know you are the prize, your energy is different. You're glowing, you're happy, you're flushed, like nobody could really get in your face and sway you. When you know that you're worthy and deserving of luxurious treatment or good things, you can't get it wrong. The energy is different. You walk around different. Your confidence is different. Your chest is forward. Your shoulders are back. The energy is just different.
No, that's perfect. Absolutely. And what's interesting too is you mentioned two things. And one is like the Lori Harvey thing. She's very much a feminine woman. She's very,
She
very much in her divine feminine energy.
she
And
is.
so it's like a lot of the times we just need to switch into our feminine energy as women. For men, the most empowering for most men, 90% of men, would be to step into their masculine energy.
Yeah.
And with that, I mean, I think in my experience with for me and my husband, that has made our manifestations come a lot easier instead of us trying to, like, if I'm sitting there trying to hustle for it, trying to,
Yeah.
burn myself out, it's just going to run away from me because that's not even what I want to be doing. That's not the path of least resistance. And
And
for
that's
him,
the path you want to be on. You know what I mean? You're
exactly.
self, I know you specifically, which
Mhm.
I think we all should really have more of. That's something even I need to work on, is
Mhm.
allowing money or success or whatever your goal is to come without it needing to be hard, without you needing
Without
to
punishing
exert,
ourselves.
like, yeah, so much energy to be able to get it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, and then something also that you said was, you're not afraid to fail. I
Yeah.
guess I tell myself, I get very dramatic with this because, the more dramatic, the more impact it makes on me. But
Yeah.
if I'm being timid about something, I realize, okay, what if I just wasn't afraid to die? Like, what if I literally wasn't afraid to die? Then that makes it a lot easier because then I'm like, oh, I can literally do whatever I want because it doesn't matter. Because most of our
That,
fears that cause our nervous system to freak out and then sabotage the manifestation in a way, sabotage the assumption, the self concept,
yeah.
is we're afraid of being rejected or being judged or I think there are like 5 or 6 fears that most people have, but they really all come down to you're afraid to be thrown out of the tribe and not be fed and die. And if you're like
Yeah.
rejected from society or from whatever the social norm is, it's different for everyone's family, everyone's culture, religion, even your city that you're in. If you are not afraid to break those norms, then you are really limitless and you can just operate in that energy of like, I know I'm going to get whatever the F I want all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
What was the second part of your question? Did I do good with
Yes.
this part at least?
Yes. No, for sure. And I totally agree with that because if it's not energy, then I don't really know what it is because it's not something necessarily logical that's happening
R-
there. Our we have neural pathways that have been ingrained for years of
Yeah.
certain doubts,
Literally
fears,
decades.
processes, limiting beliefs, and it would take a lot, many, many years to change that. But if we change our self concept entirely and change our state of being, which is our energy, we can cut through that in weeks, days, months, whatever.
Exactly. Very, very quickly. And I know a
Super
lot of
easy.
people want like really fast results. I think another thing that I actually want to add before we go into the next topic, because it just came
Yeah.
into my brain, is in law of attraction, and correct me
Mhm.
if I'm wrong, they talked a lot about a frequency. A
Yeah.
frequency, a frequency, a frequency. And in many instances, even on YouTube, I'm sure till this day, it's flooded. And when I say flooded, I mean sometimes I even still see like things on my YouTube homepage
Uh-huh.
of like listen to like 486 hertz to be able to tap into the frequency of love or whatever, each
Yeah.
respective frequency is. Now, I do believe there's a certain level of energy
Mhm.
in feelings, but that's something that even psychologists and neurobiologists understand. Naturally,
Yeah.
when someone is in an angry state, when someone is in a hungry state, when someone is in a hunter state, like,
Mhm.
like way back in the day, like
Yeah.
during like the times where men had to go out and hunt, like how you alluded to earlier, versus someone being in a loving state versus
Mhm.
someone being in some other type of survival state, that activates a different level of energy based on what the body biochemically also needs to
Mhm.
either feel the response or
Yes.
whatever cascade of events have to happen in our body to be able to stimulate those endorphins or whatever it is. um but I think where attraction kind of got us all confused is like, I remember at one point in time, this is so funny because I've never shared this publicly, laying in my bed back during my law of attraction days when I really just didn't know anything, but I wanted a better life. And
Yeah.
laying in my bed and staring at my ceiling and being like, I'm never going to get this right, because I was trying to listen to some type of frequency. And I
Uh-huh.
don't remember whether it was for love or money or success or whatever it was, staring at the ceiling and
Yeah.
being like, I have no idea how I'm supposed to calibrate my energy to 528 hertz or whatever it is. I'm like, do I have to buy a machine for this? What type of
Mhm.
investment in this is this? And just
Yeah.
being so hopelessly confused. Like, do I have to hook myself up to this machine and it calculates my energy? Like, I was so not into it at that point in time. I was like, this is
Yeah.
never going to work. You know what I mean? It was one of those like types of moments.
Yeah, no, I get that. And So now that I'm thinking about it, wouldn't that just kind of, for for the people who do law
Who,
of attraction and
yeah,
resonate with that more, because I'm sure that there are people who that works better for just because that's what they believe, right?
that's their assumption.
And I would just say that I still see it as doing the same exact thing, just through a different method of like changing your inner state, changing your self concept. And like, if that's the best way and path of least resistance for you is to listen to a
Yeah,
certain frequency and that you actually believe that that's working for you, then it will work for
you're gonna
you. But I don't believe that for me. I know that it's going to take a lot of convincing to make my mind believe that. So
yeah,
it's just probably not going to happen that fast. It may take a few years,
yeah, literally.
Yeah. So, and then I also wanted to say just the last thing on the energy before I ask
Yeah.
you the other part of the question is that I think I compare this to dating, but it really goes for everything. Is that you do have to be the energetic counterpart,
Hmm.
say, the feminine for the masculine, for that polarity to
Hmm.
occur.
Right.
But that's still a state of being and a self concept in general. So everything comes back to it. But
Yeah.
let me move on to the question, the other part of it, which does have to do with feminine energy. So, from what you now know about the feminine energy,
Hmm.
how do you see that playing the biggest role in law of assumption and self concept and manifesting from that perspective?
So basically, what you're asking me, because I want to make sure I'm getting it right, how does the feminine energy play a role in masculine and feminine dating dynamics? Is that?
Not necessarily, just in your work in general, if
Hmm.
you were to do you use feminine energy maybe unknowingly now that we have talked about it for so long?
Right.
Maybe it came to you where you're like, oh, well, okay, now I realize that this is actually where I was using this or whatnot. How
Yeah.
does that, I guess, play? How do you see that playing the biggest role in law of assumption and self concept in general? It doesn't have to
Okay.
necessarily do with dating.
Okay, so I think I kind of get where you're going with it. So for me, I have wanted to learn about masculine and feminine polarity dynamics for a long time. I had my own personal reasons, mainly because I have been in my fight or flight energy the majority of my life.
Yeah.
I went through, my bachelor's in Florida. I went through my master's overseas. I have a medical degree as a surgical physician assistant who specializes in general surgery. I've been in my running, doing exhaustion phases for more than a decade. I have more than a decade of, you know, postgraduate education and all that other stuff. Having said that, very, you know, giving that type of big background, it was very important for me to calm my nervous system down. I started to get hormonal imbalances. I started to have different problems that I actually didn't end up having in my youth play out in my adulthood. And I just realized the amount of stress that I was under while undergoing like a professional medical program was getting me all out of whack. And if I didn't get my act together, it was just not going to end up good. There were many times I would have mental breakdowns, imposter syndrome. Like I've been very upfront and vocal and vulnerable about those types of situations. So, in that situation, I think where it was very important for me to begin to start to learn about masculine and feminine dynamics is because I think a lot of women have shame around receiving
Yeah.
things, in general, maybe even from their dad, from their mom,
Yeah.
from their parents, receiving affection, receiving consistency,
Yes.
receiving friendships that are there for you. Like it was almost like my assumptions were just really not good. Like it's like there's something in some parts of us, some people that may resonate with that, where we struggle to receive and to relax, especially when I was raised by a father who obviously loves me to death, that I have the best relationship with, but who always taught me like you got to work hard. People aren't going to give you anything. You got to put blood, sweat and tears to get what you want. And my idols growing up were people like The Rock, who also talks about blood, sweat, and tears, be the hardest worker in the room, self sacrificial. And medical people, especially, we always put everybody before ourselves because that's our job. So it's almost like I chose the perfect career path because that's just naturally, innately who I am, which
Yeah.
is great, but you have to be able to have boundaries with that. And that was something that in that phase of my life I didn't do. Now, to
Mhm.
connect it to your question and where I think it's important in law of assumption and how I can now, in hindsight, see what I'm doing now is I started to tell not only my clients, but I started to make sure I was doing it myself, where I would take time out of my day to maybe make had a very long, luxurious bath that I bathed myself after the bath in like these beautiful oils or lotions that made me feel very good and very calm and very relaxed. That I would purposely schedule time where the phone would have to go away. Like we even have a running joke in my house where my parents and my brother are threatening to buy me like a box to put my phone in after a certain period of working hours, which I think is actually a great idea.
Probably a good idea.
I think it's a good idea. So I see certain things and I tell people also, I'm like, if you were to activate maybe your wifey level, does
Mhm.
she go to the gym? Does she journal? Does she script? Does she like, what does she do? And I think I started to implement some of the things that I saw as being more superficial
Yeah.
but actually were feminine practices. Like I have like this really amazing skincare regime now. I practice like making sure I always put oils or lotions on my body, or I always make sure that, I get my hair done after a certain amount of days, or make sure that I'm getting like fully dressed and capable to go out and be seen in society. You know what I mean? Which where
Yeah.
before I would just be in like what I call like my homeless Persis look, which for me that was just a deflection because I didn't feel good enough to be able to put that time or effort into my regime. So I see how it applies in law of assumption because when we do those things, there is a science behind when you look good, you feel good, you act good. You know what I mean?
Yes. Oh, yeah, 100%. And I can see it also playing, or it does play a huge role in being able to even receive your manifestation. If you cannot, maybe you're at the state where you have the assumption, but then you're blocking yourself from receiving the
Mhm.
manifestation. It's like it could literally be right in front of you, but
Yeah.
you can't even see it or be able to receive it because your nervous system is going to freak out and sabotage it, or
Yeah.
freak out and like
Much
a
so.
relationship. Maybe you're trying to manifest even your specific person, for example, but if you are not in your nervous system is not primed, which
Yeah.
I guess I could see this as when your assumption is 100% concrete within your self concept, that's when your nervous system is primed for it. We're just using different language to describe that, I guess.
Yeah. And I want to just interject one more thing in here because I have
Mhm.
like a really good way to actually maybe make this make sense to other people who may be struggling with it a little bit, which is if you were to imagine the version of you that's maybe even with your specific person or a wife, like we mentioned before, if she gets up and gets ready every day and goes to the gym and maybe has hot girl Pilates and then goes to brunch with friends and has a very active social life, but all you're doing right now is being in your home and being like, he's obsessed with me, he loves me, he wants me, and you're just at home knitting him a sweater, you're not living in integrity
Yeah.
with who she is that's already got him. So the
Mhm.
more you can merge the way you think, feel, believe, act, like if a big part of for some reason your quantum self, she just has an active social life and you're just being home and being miserable and being depressed, maybe that's a sign that, take up a new hobby. You know what I mean? Go outside, try to hang out with friends, try to be more consistent because think about it. Your mental, emotional, physical being and your energy, like how we spoke of, is going to literally be like so hopeless and depressed because every moment you're like, why hasn't he come back yet? Why
Yeah.
hasn't this moved yet? And it's like actually when you're so busy living your best life, even if you think of women that successfully manifest an X back, whether they knew of manifestation or whether they didn't, think about the videos that they come on TikTok and post. It's when you're living your best life and you're out and you're enjoying yourself that they always come back. It's when you know your sense of self-worth and you know your worth that they come back. They're literally just talking about manifestation. They're
Yep.
literally just talking about having a good self concept and expecting the best because they know they're the prize and they know maybe even, and this isn't applicable for everybody, but maybe that the other person messed up, that the other person is never going to find better. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And sometimes we don't really think about things from that perspective, but even non-manifestation girlies that don't even have that type of knowledge, even
Yeah.
they know what's up, consciously or unconsciously.
Oh, for sure. Like I can look back in my life, my entire life and see how those situations played out. I'm like, wow, well now I see exactly why they
Yeah,
played out the way that they did.
that's funny.
But I want to ask you, I know that we are probably going to wrap it up soon, but
Yeah.
one last question about, you did mention the reason you even wanted to do this live in the first place was
Mhm.
that you felt that your community struggled with, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I believe it came down to either a worthiness issue or not feeling good enough in some
Mhm.
sort of way. So would you mind just expanding on that a little bit? What maybe even, that was a few months ago that we talked about that. So maybe there's been a shift in the struggle or something that you've seen as a trend within your community that they need, assistance with in that degree.
Yeah, I would definitely say that my community, from what I see from the individuals that are the most vocal in my lives, they
Mm-hmm.
struggle with a couple of different things. One of them is first and foremost believing and trusting in themselves and believing and trusting in the law. It's
Mm-hmm.
funny because I have this very unique community that I built, and I bring people maybe from my coaching personally, or maybe just followers or fans that support what I teach and what I put out here, and I even bring them on and I interview them, kind of like how we've interviewed each other. And so many people resonate with the people who have gone from maybe rags to riches, or who have
Mm-hmm.
manifested multi-millions, who have manifested an SP, or manifested new love, or manifested money. And they've done these crazy quantum leaps, but they still can't believe in themselves. It's like no matter how much proof I give them, no matter how
Mm-hmm.
much evidence we present, sometimes they're struggling to believe it can happen for them. It's like an everybody but me situation. And I think it actually connects back to the fact that this negative story, whatever it represents, is almost like embedded into them. You know what I mean? Like they
Totally.
don't know who they'd be if they had to remove this. It's almost like I
Mm-hmm.
don't actually know who I am without this negative story. I
Yeah.
don't know who I am if life could work out for me, because it hasn't. And their justification is always, well, it hasn't happened up and until this point. So if it was supposed to happen, it would have already happened. And
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Persis comes out and tries to tell them, like, listen, remember why it didn't happen in the past. It didn't happen in the past because we had a compilation of poor expectations. We didn't think or feel or believe or assume or expect good things out of this. And then that's what ended up playing out in a series of unfortunate events.
Yeah.
So that's definitely one of the first things that I would love to bring up if you have any pieces of advice, because for them, they struggle with that. You know what I mean? They struggle with, and no matter how many proofs I show them, they
Mhm.
struggle to think that it's something that could happen for them.
Yeah. So I see this within my own coaching. I'll make a parallel here.
Yeah.
But there are a few stages.
Yeah.
There's a very, very wounded feminine stage where it's kind of stuck in that hopelessness. Like, I'm not even worthy of it. I'm not deserving of it. I don't even believe that it's possible.
Right.
And then once I see people move out of that stage, which normally this is what has moved people out of that stage,
Yeah.
is not deciding, literally making the decision. That is so important. That sounds simple, but that
Yeah.
is the most important thing, is making the decision that you are no longer a victim to your stories and you can
Yeah.
create new stories.
Right.
That's it. Write that down, everyone that's
Write
listening,
it down.
because seriously, making the absolute decision and understanding that if it's not working out for you, even using, I'll try to use this, law of assumption language, but if the self-concept is not solidified, or if your assumption is not solidified, you're still in indecision. You
Yeah.
have not decided that that gets to be true for you. You have
Right.
not decided that. And so then what I see is when women move, I primarily work with women, so that's why I'm saying this, but when women move from the wounded feminine stage into this wounded masculine stage, they go into overdrive. And
Right.
I don't know where you see this or if you do see this, but it's like, okay, time to say my affirmations 1 million times a day, and I'm not going to stop until I'm burned out and I literally crash in my bed.
I
Or
will promote
yeah,
that.
or for example, with business, like I help women get into their feminine energy with their businesses and whatnot and attract the wealth rather than hustle for it. It's
Yeah.
like you have to then make the decision that it gets to be available for you
Yeah.
without hustling, that it gets to be easy for you.
Yeah.
And that is a decision, because you can see in the world there are people who work really, really hard and do not make a lot of money. And there are people who don't work very hard and they have a ton of money.
Yeah.
So if that is out there and available, yeah, why are you the exception? Like that, it's interesting because that actually kind of makes a concept for, you would think that this person could switch into this to be like, oh, I am the exception, so then I should be the exception to be effing amazing,
Yeah.
rather than the exception to have everything, operate in the opposite of my favor. So
Exactly.
it's an interesting mindset. Yeah.
It is an interesting mindset. And this is the thing, because manifestation is also a very multifaceted like topic. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we do have a lot of parts and pieces. I talked a little
Mhm.
bit about my manifestation equation. I know my people are aware of it. I know you're newly aware of it, but a lot of times also I see as a coach, the reason why some people don't get what they want is maybe because even in the journey of point A, which is where they are now, which is point B, which is where they want to go, they don't realize when they try to reprogram their subconscious mind, maybe the subconscious mind rebels. Maybe the old stories come up. Maybe certain things end up happening. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And they don't, and then they start to panic. Then they change routes. Then they change affirmations. Then they start to think they're doing something wrong. Like, I do think, and I don't know if you believe this also, a lot of things also come down to, if you know when you take 10 paces forward that there's a ditch and that you have to walk around it, you're not going to be as intimidated with each step to anticipate a ditch. And sometimes people don't really know what is the process of changing an assumption and how your brain actually isn't wired in your favor when it pertains to reality creation, because of course, the overwhelming stack of knowledge of all your past memories is going to come and haunt you. And it's
Yeah.
funny because I had some of my supporters come on a live with me a little while back, and we kind of had this little sparring session where I was like, well, why don't you give me an example of some of the affirmations you say in a day-to-day basis as your form of self-talk? And they were like, I'm the most amazing person. And I played the devil in this aspect, and I didn't even know there was a book called Outwitting the Devil, but it
Best
came
book
up.
ever.
Oh my God,
Best book ever.
it came up as an analogy for me as a teaching point where I spoke of the subconscious mind in an angel on the shoulder, devil on the shoulder type of situation. And I was like, you got to outwit the devil. And they're like, oh my God, did you read that book? And I was like, no, I didn't. I don't know what you're talking about. I just came up with the analogy. And so when they were like, I'm worthy of the most amazing love, I'd be like, no, you're not. They'd be like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm so pretty and beautiful. No, you're not. You know what I
Nope.
mean? And I'd
Yeah.
come there and I'd kind of be that person. I'd be the devil in that moment to show them, like, of course, your brain is not going to be working for you
Mhm.
in those beginning stages, but are you capable of persisting anyway, deciding anyway? Because there's a reason only 1% of people in like general society actually probably consciously become the 1%. You know,
Yeah.
it's because they understand the power of the mind and how to unlock it. You really need to make sure that you're fully invested and all in, because who you decide to be in this present moment is going to dictate how your life works out for you in the next moment. But if you're stuck on how your life was in the past moment and you
Mhm.
want to go into a future version, well, your identity is stuck in the past. You can only just keep living the past out in new people, in new experiences, and then say it's because of those old experiences that life doesn't work. When in reality, you're not changing to make the life better.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. So much came up for that for me too. And you just let me know when time is for you for your
Yeah, we can
live that
finish
you
this
need to end.
talking point, and I think we're pretty good, honestly.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I think like you said, it's gonna keep playing out. It's gonna keep playing out. in a relationship perspective, the way that, people get into relationships and they see the same thing over and over again. He ghosts me, he ghosts me, he ghosts me. He
Yeah.
makes me go 50-50. This one makes me go 50-50. This one does too. He, whatever other situations people continuously see happening in their lives. That is going to happen until you heal these certain stories and triggers and do the inner work on it. It's going
Yeah.
to keep repeating itself because the point of it repeating itself is that
It's
it's mirroring to you
yeah.
that, like, hello, like,
Please fix
heal
this.
this, heal this, heal this. And
Right.
so, as for example, say I use this a lot, but you're making $2,000 a month in your business.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, cool, that's normal, that's easy for me, whatever. And then you want to manifest $10,000 a month. And so
Mm-hmm.
then you start moving up there, you get to 5,000 and then triggers come up. And then you're like, oh my God, like I can't manifest 10 because now this is this. But that's the whole point of, the inner work throughout or you said something too that had to do with like your assumptions. The whole
Right.
point of repeating them to yourself is to allow the nervous system to actually like release the triggers so that they come up to the surface, and then you can heal them. And then once you've repeated it enough and all the triggers have come up, you actually do the inner work on them instead of just letting them throw you off.
Yeah.
Then you're actually able to hold the next level instead of getting there and sabotaging it. Like, you don't want the next level if you can't hold it,
Right.
because you can sabotage like
Yeah.
your whole life if you are not ready for it.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And to even expand on that just a little bit, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
so sad because I did have one more question. Maybe we could answer it very shortly.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But one of the things I just wanted to add is a very quick note to that. Like, when you know that you are amazing, that you are a prize, that you are worth it, that you deserve the unconditional love, someone to stick by you through thick and through thin in any situation, no matter what, you are, and you know that love is available for me, that you can't get it wrong, and that your specific person or new person is going to end up reaching out and fulfilling your every desire. Well, that's the 360 dynamic that you need to call that in. You're covering all your bases. What I call, like, you're paying your covered charge to get into the club. Similar with money. If I know, maybe I'm in my business, I know that I have amazing products, that I'm serving people, that there's a need for this, that I am worthy and deserving of having XYZ amount of sales, or for people to come into my world to help better their lives. And I know that business doesn't have to be difficult. It can be easy because what I'm offering is what people need. And this is very like a mutual beneficial type of situation. I'm going to be able to magnetize people in.
Mm-hmm.
But if I know that I'm worthy, but I don't expect people to buy, or I don't think that I'm worthy, but I want him to love me, like, some people have what I call one side of the equation off.
Mm,
And they're
right.
wondering, like, well, he should reach out. I feel like he should have. I'm like, but do you feel worthy, capable, and deserving for him to reach out? Like, does that feel likely? No. I'm like, well, then we found our issue. You know,
Confirming it, right.
like, sometimes it can be on the self concept side, sometimes it can be how that topic works out for you in general, sometimes it can be regarding like maybe a specific person, or how business works, or how friendships work. And you need to make sure that you're working on your deficiencies. Manifestation isn't about working on your strengths, it's about working on your deficiencies.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to ask just one quick question, and then we're both going to
Sure.
hop off. I know this was like a long live.
No, it's
Um,
great.
but I think this is like a good question for a lot of people, which is, I know sometimes women have a lower sense of self worth, and maybe even like extreme guilt in terms of receiving from a man, especially a woman that's maybe trying to call in a new relationship or an old relationship or whatever it may be. Like, maybe she feels unworthy of it because that wasn't the dynamic she originally set up, or maybe, like, whatever it may be. Let's even maybe just stick to new love in that essence or in that situation. How would you give advice to a woman that maybe doesn't feel worthy or deserving of having all of her requirements ticked in that list that we spoke of?
Yeah, so I think it's important to understand the other side as well. So for a woman who wants to be in her feminine energy, this does go back to this because feminine energy is receiving.
Yeah.
If you cannot receive, that is actually a red flag to a man in his masculine energy. You're
Right.
not going to attract a man who even wants to give to you. And that's also a product of, it's a whole cycle of, that's a product of having the low self-worth, not feeling worthy, all of that.
Yeah.
So understanding that the masculine energy, it fills him up to give.
Yeah.
As women, yes, I think it does fill us up to nurture and give as well in a different way. But the masculine has been built for years, for thousands of years, to give. And so by blocking that from a man, you're actually hindering him, and you're not allowing him to fully live out his masculine energy. And
Hmm.
so imagine if men were doing that to us. It doesn't feel good to go on a date and then have a
Right.
man ask for you to pay half. Like, that's blocking your feminine energy. Like, you're not receiving anything. You're literally paying to spend time with him. That
Right.
doesn't feel good to a feminine woman. And so
Yeah.
just like a man, if she wanted to go 50-50, then he's kind of like, I don't actually get to give to this woman. I don't actually get to provide, protect, and pursue.
Yeah.
It just cuts that off. And so I think that is a big click for a lot of women to realize, oh, well, he actually wants to fulfill those desires for me, and I'm
Yeah.
completely blocking it.
Oh,
And so, sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
sorry, I was actually just saying a man wants to be useful.
Yes. And
If you're going to do his whole job for him, he's going to feel like, okay, let me just sit on the couch and eat potato chips,
yes, exactly. And so men are naturally, I don't want to say a people pleaser, but if, say, in a marriage, for example, right? So ignore the dating. These people are already committed to each other, like they're in a marriage.
Yeah.
If I go into my masculine energy and I'm like, no, stop, don't put the dishes there, like, don't do this, don't do that. My husband, even though he's a masculine man and wants to provide for me and protect me and be the leader, he's going to preserve the peace and just sit back and like let me have my moment
Yeah.
until I go back into my feminine energy. And so most people play out those dynamics and don't realize that they are for years. And they're like, why won't he take me on dates? Why won't he provide for me? Why won't he do this? Well, it's because you are unknowingly in your masculine energy. And usually, I mean, look, we have to use our masculine energy. We're using it right now to teach. We have
Right.
to run our businesses, but it's about using it intentionally.
Yeah.
And there was something else I was going to say about receiving and the masculine giving, but I can't remember. So hopefully it comes back to me. But is there anything that you wanted to say on that?
Yeah, I wanted to just add a quick thing in. If you think about your goddess energy, the woman
Mm-hmm.
who gets to give to a man that very pure, loving, loyal, honest, supportive, nurturing energy, you give it to a man who's also showed up at a certain caliber. You don't give it to someone who is still disrespecting your boundaries, being inconsistent, in and out, and just coming in when they want to, or seeing you as a convenience. So I think where masculine and feminine also plays into manifestation is if you think about like a very feminine goddess like woman, do you think like she's sitting there and mothering her husband
No.
and being like, don't put the dishes there. That's not where they go. And da 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 da. You know what I mean? Sometimes, and it's not to say you shouldn't exercise and use your vocals for things that upset you. You
Right.
should always. I'm a big fan of communication. But
Yes.
I think there's always a way to do it because if you activate goddess mode and you ask yourself, is this something the goddess version of me would do? And just like yell at my husband and chastise him and emasculate him like he's a child, the answer is almost always probably no.
Right.
Maybe it could come across in a more polite manner that I really don't appreciate when we just have the house like a mess because it just causes me anxiety. If you could
Mm-hmm.
just help put this over here, maybe even I'll take over the second half of it, but I just can't handle it when the house is in a mess like this. That changes the energy tremendously from, I don't understand why you're not doing this and why this is like this and da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of the times, a man is more inspired to be a man when he's also receiving that mutual respect and not being chastised as if he's like a small kid that's been told to go to his room.
Yeah, so that's actually something that reminded me what I was going to say was that I guess it gets to the part, okay, so if a man is giving all the time, how do men not feel used? Someone actually, you might have asked me that question, or somebody asked me that question recently, but it's whenever, if you don't appreciate it, that's when a man feels used. Because the reason that they want to provide and all that is, of course, because they love you, if we're talking about being in a marriage. But it's also because they thrive on appreciation of their providing, of their protecting, and
Yeah.
whatnot. And so that's really important. But also when it comes to, I would love to get into communication a little bit real quick,
Yeah.
because that's really, really important in relationships. Is if you find yourself being the woman who is nagging and doing stuff like that, I mean, you're probably doing that because he's not doing what you want him to do, right?
Right.
That you don't get that by having this logical, even discussion like that. You have to know how to inspire that gut level masculine, wanting to do things for you, wanting to protect you reaction.
Yeah.
And that's really key, because if you cannot do that, you'll be stuck in the logical plane. And whenever you get logical with a man, it's basically a man communicating with a man about why he should
Yeah.
expend less energy because that's what benefits him, right?
Yeah.
But when you think about the man who is just so in love with a woman, he would do anything for her, all that, she knows how to inspire that reaction from him. And that comes from her being in her feminine energy. And so,
Yeah.
one, pick your battles. I think that if we think about this, even in, I don't have children, but I thought about this back in my childhood. If you think
Yeah.
about parenting, if you think about relationships, if you think about setting boundaries and even friendships, if you are always nagging and complaining about everything,
Hmm.
when you finally have something actually serious to say, it's going to just kind of be written off like, oh, well, this person is just saying something again. They say something all the time.
Yeah.
Is this really important?
Yeah.
But if you pick your battles and you actually only communicate things that are like, okay, whenever you say this, they know that you're serious.
Yeah.
That's when it's really important, and you're taken more seriously. You're in your goddess energy. Men do test the feminine to see how is she going to react. Is she going to go into her wounded feminine, or is she a goddess? Which one is
Yeah.
it? And they want the goddess.
Absolutely. And it's funny
Yeah.
because from a manifestation perspective, to connect what you're saying from your masculine and feminine expertise and to bring it back into manifestation, think about a woman who may be seen as more of mothering her partner.
Mm.
That maybe more of that nagging energy is what men like to diminish it and call it as. But
Mm.
if technically, if you're nagging or if you have to like chastise your partner a little bit,
Yeah.
think about what you're focusing on. You're focusing on lack. And that's what I had to quickly type out before I forgot the thought, which is like if you're focused on lack and what he or she is doing incorrectly, because it applies on both sides, you're
Mm.
going to end up attracting more lack in that relationship. So it's kind of difficult because for me, actually, I advise to my clients and to people in general that manifestation is a lifestyle. It's not a means to an end.
Mm.
And that there are going to be in life, like if you choose to use manifestation in your favor to get life to work out for you the way that you want, rather than being the person that life happens to, that
Right.
there is always going to be a mirror held up to you in any relationship with any man or woman, anybody, specific person, no specific person, being with the milkman, not me being with the milkman. That's what it's going to end up being. And that different levels of the relationship, from when you're in courtship to when you're in exclusivity, to when you're engaged, to when you're married, to when you have children, you are always going to naturally experience the ebbs and flows of a relationship. Now, this isn't me putting a limiting belief. This is just biology and facts and manifestation, because once again, think about it, to connect my previous point. If you were already someone who could be a married woman with children and you embodied that fully, you'd already be there.
Yeah.
The fact that you're not there means that something is missing from your current state of beliefs. And
Right.
as you begin to quantum leap from one level to the next level, to level 2, to level 3, to level 4, to level 5, there's a different version of you that is maybe living together, that is maybe married, that is maybe having a child, or that is maybe doing something else. And so, if you're going to take everything your partner does offensively and make it mean that he or she doesn't care about you, and create stories that of what are not true but are the only things your brain can latch onto in that moment, that relationship is unfortunately going to end up detangling and dismembering itself. You know what I mean? Because you've got to be able to, and this is just what I advise people in general, if you can't see manifestation as a lifelong game, you're
Mhm.
going to be in for big trouble. Because as you continue to expand, there will be different levels of you that will need to see if this is a recurring pattern. What is coming up here? What part of me is maybe focusing on this too much, maybe doesn't think that I'm worthy or deserving of this, or doesn't think that this is possible. If you're not someone that's obsessed with self refinement and self growth and self development, it's going to be a very strong uphill battle. If you're someone that can't take feedback or
Mhm.
be coachable, it's really difficult because your partner is going to be the one that coaches you on what you need to work on.
Oh yeah, unknowingly and knowingly. I think that uh, relationships and having your own business are the
Yeah.
two most triggering things that you can, have in your
Yeah.
life. But that's a good thing
Yeah.
because I know a lot of people really like to avoid triggers. We're in the era of having safe spaces and stuff like that. Um, but I am not a fan of that because I think that avoids dealing with your triggers, healing them. Everyone has triggers. Everyone.
Yeah.
They're for different things. But if you're okay, so this is a lot of the things that I see too. Is that if even if someone's in a relationship already, they get irritated because they're like, well, my partner's triggering me all the time. And it's
Right.
like, yes, that
Why?
is supposed to happen. That is
Why?
supposed to happen.
Yeah. If you
And
want to go to the next level, he's going to.
yeah, and like I think it's kind of, any entrepreneur can attest to this, but your business is going to trigger you. Like something's going to happen, problems need to be solved. You have to upgrade to the next level. You have to do the inner work. That's just solving problems or doing the inner work to upgrade your self-concept in that
Yeah.
matter. And so
Absolutely.
that's going to happen for a business, but for
Hmm.
relationships, we expect that to be a breeze, or we expect it to be super easy. Yes, it gets to be easy because you decide that doing the inner work for the triggers gets to be easy. Not that there will never be any triggers. I mean, that would be a really, really boring relationship too.
Yeah, that's true. Technically, if there was like nothing that ever happened in your relationship, and if you were capable of going from like zero relationship to a married woman with children, I'm sure you would actually maybe even end up taking on some like, I don't want to say it in a bad way, but almost like trauma. You know what I mean? Like to jump so high so fast. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that we actually go very in the order that we are ready for. You know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
Um, I don't think a lot of people end up with the very first person because that tends to be actually a mirror from childhood wounds, like
Mm. Yeah.
paternal and maternal wounds.
Yeah.
Um, so that's why I think that sometimes the law is there to actually work in our benefit, because there's a good reason for why we can't just jump from a single woman to a married woman with children. And that's because if we jumped there, as soon as we get there, every time he'd be like, baby, I love you, have a nice day, you'd be like, what is he doing at work though? Who is he texting? What is happening? And
Oh
you'd
yeah.
end up self sabotaging your own blessing because you're actually not ready to hold that manifestation.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I am newly married, so I actually got married on the 28th. I haven't even told really my community yet, so y'all are special over here in this first. But yeah, so I what I noticed is that I have never heard anyone talk about this before, and I'm like, why is no one talking about this? But dating for marriage, I had that self-concept down. There was no shifting that.
Yeah.
Well, once you're engaged, there's like this little waiting period right before you're married, so then it's this weird, to me it was weird, this weird like in between identity that you kind of have to move into, but you're not going to be in for long, and you also have to mentally prepare yourself for being a wife because it's
Yeah.
different than being a fiance. And so I never hear people talking about this. It's like, oh, you're a fiance and then you just do it, but there needs to be that waiting period,
Yeah.
like it is a different game for each of those levels, and I think that needs to be talked about more. I need to start talking about it more, but I
Yeah.
just find it so interesting. It's a
I
totally
feel,
different self-concept.
I feel so lonely in this process. Please start talking about it.
Yes, I'll definitely make some videos on it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Do you have any other last minute things you'd like to add?
No, I mean, I asked my questions,
Yeah.
and
Did you
yeah,
guys it. I hope you guys enjoyed it immensely. We've actually been at this for 90 minutes because TikTok just notified me.
Oh,
Funny
nice.
because I just got the low battery notification on my phone. I
Ah,
think we're ending on the right spot here. Um,
yes.
but I hope this was hugely, hugely, hugely informative. I'm going to post Farrell again on my stories if you want to go follow her and talk to her. Go to her YouTube page. Why don't you share your socials right here for anybody who may want to reach out to you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so I don't know how to type it in the chat. My phone's kind of up here, so I'll just
No,
spell it out. But yes, so on YouTube, it is Feralux, Feraluxe. Same on TikTok. I
yeah.
guess they could probably click on my name on the TikTok here. They
Yeah,
haven't
I
clicked yet, though, just
definitely
do it
post
then.
your TikTok on here, and then I will screenshot
Okay.
your YouTube for anybody who may want to reach out to her also. She also
Mhm.
makes wonderful femininity courses for anyone who wants to activate their femininity to attract a masculine provider man. She speaks at it in a way that I actually really agree with, which is if you're not attracting certain types of polarities in your relationship, it's coming down to who you're being and what you're expecting. So you guys can check her out over there, see if you like it, if you vibe with it. I don't often, sign off on individuals on this app or any other one. So if I am backing someone, please definitely take that seriously because I don't do that. So
I
definitely go check
appreciate
her out. I definitely support like what she's teaching and what she talks about. And of course, for anybody who may have been new in this live, just passing through, naturally, I'm Persis. You can follow me here at the same name also on YouTube. And I also do have a manifestation journal and other resources to get you started on how to start to change your assumptions to align with the life that you want. So, my information is in the bio. If you literally just get off of this live, which I'm about to end now, I'll post all of our stories or all of my stories tagging her as well. And I hope you guys have learned something beneficial. I will definitely repurpose this onto YouTube probably in a couple of hours because it'll take a while for TikTok to process it. And I just hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
Yeah. Thanks for
Thank
having me
you so
on.
much.